some more. Got it. Okay. Here we go, guys. I'm going to start letting people in. Everyone ready? Yeah. Awesome. Good morning, everybody. People start to join here.
Morning.
Thanks everyone for joining us this morning. As you enter in the room, hopefully everyone can hear me. Please pop your name, business, or organization into the chat and let us know the traditional and ancestral territories where you live and work. I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional and unceded territories of the Squamish, the Musqueam, the Tsleil-Waututh First Nations, which I live and work. Feel free to do the same. And we are just going to give it a few minutes here so others can join us.
Good morning, everyone. It's awfully quiet.
Good morning, good morning. All right, let's kick things off. Meg, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm sure a few more will be joining us as they sit down with their coffee or their matcha, whatever their pleasure is. But we'll get started with a few introductions as usual. So just one reminder as we kick it off, please mute unless you are the speaker of choice at that moment. All right. So it's my pleasure to welcome you to the fifth and final session for 2021 of the Greater Vancouver Circular Economy Network. This series is designed to connect and support the growth of circular businesses in the region. And it's based on the priorities that we heard in a survey earlier this year are really important to circular businesses. This is a collaboration of the Vancouver Economic Commission, Van City, and the Share Reuse Repair Initiative, all of whom you'll hear from today. My name is Meg, and I'm the Senior Manager of Economic Transformation at the Vancouver Economic Commission. So I'm joining you today from the traditional and unceded territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh Nations. Co-facilitating with me this morning is Rosemary Cooper from the Share Reuse Repair Initiative. Rosie?
Yeah, thanks, Meg. As Meg said, I'm the Project Director of the Share Reuse Repair Initiative, and our session today is focused on policy. And our goal is to really have a conversation involving policymakers and circular businesses to explore the potential to scale the circular economy when we work together. And we really want to kind of shed light on what is policy and what is not, and then what we can, as I said, what we can do together to ensure that policy just both works for the government folks in the room, but also for the circular businesses. And our aim is for you to leave today with a clearer sense of policies that can support circular business growth in the Lower Mainland, but also with a stronger understanding of how businesses and government can move the circular economy forward together. In my career, I've been a policymaker. I both also worked with and for cities and businesses. So when you can see kind of into both, I think there's a lot of collaborative potential and potential to kind of work together that we can move into.
Thanks, Rosie. We have three great speakers this morning from different scales of policy development. And we also have a number of other policymakers joining us on the call and able to participate in the breakout rooms. So what we're really looking forward to is a very collaborative discussion and a way to start building the bridges between policymakers and businesses in the circular vein, so that as policies are developed, they really enable the circular economy. The three speakers that we have this morning are Andrea McKenzie, who is a zero waste project engineer with the City of Vancouver, Karen Storry, senior engineer at Metro Vancouver, and Julie-Anne Toda, a business development liaison at the City of Richmond. And we really want to hear from you, the business community. What works for you in terms of policy and what doesn't? We want to hear your thoughts on how policy can support us growing the circular economy in the Lower Mainland together. So first we'll hear from our speakers. We'll have a Q&A for each speaker. And then in the second portion of the event, we'll have a chance to connect and talk with each other in breakout rooms to take on the topics and questions that are most relevant to the business community and the policymakers at this moment. You're strongly encouraged to stay for the duration, since the breakout rooms are always abuzz with valuable information and insights for circular economy practitioners. And today that includes policymakers who are working on developing those policies that will regulate and enable the circular economy.
Thanks, Meg. So before we move forward, I just want to introduce a few of the folks on the team here. So Michelle Bonner is joining us from Van City. Michelle, can you say hi? Good morning. Alice is joining us here from the Share, Reuse, Repair Initiative. Please say a quick hello or a wave. Thank you. We have Brianna Bishop also joining us from the Vancouver Economic Commission.
Good morning.
Okay, we can see you. Thanks for putting your video back on. And we also have Jill Orris, who is supporting us in this event from a coordination and other perspectives. If you have any tech trouble today, want to suggest a speaker or a topic or challenge to address for future events, please reach out to Jill in the chat function. Jill, can you say a quick hello?
Hi, everyone.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks, Jill. So a few quick admin matters before we start. The session is being recorded, and you can choose to remain off camera and submit any questions to the chat function if you choose. Breakout sessions will not be recorded. And basically, we're going to be following today Chatham House rules. So we welcome everyone to share candidly, in this Zoom space together. But after the meeting, you can bring up points that people spoke to, but we ask that you do not attribute them to anyone directly. And with that, let's dive in. So I'd like to highlight Alice Henry, who will briefly share with us some context around policy and set the stage for our speaker lineup. Alice.
Thanks, Rosemary. Before we hear from our speakers, we thought it was important to give this discussion some framing. We are convening this space to explore the opportunities for collaboration between businesses, such as those in the audience, and our local governments. To understand how that collaboration can take place, it's important to know in what areas collaboration can happen and in what areas policy can impact business. People working in government at the municipal and regional levels can influence how business is done through plans, like the Greenest City Action Plan, through strategies like the single-use item reduction strategy, communication campaigns like Create Memories, Not Garbage, and bylaws such as the recent ones passed around deconstruction in the City of Vancouver. Through RFPs or requests for proposals, they can also run an open bid process to contract organizations, nonprofit or for-profit, for a particular work, like the Zero Waste Place program delivered in Vancouver schools. Lastly, they can influence government purchasing decisions through procurement policies, like the Supplier Code of Conduct that sets minimum ethics standards for purchases. Sometimes there is alignment between a business entity and a policy or agenda, and they can work in business and government can work together promptly. Other times the timing might be right or funding might not be there. Sometimes the timing is never right. This is all on a case-by-case basis. Businesses can leverage policy in a lot of ways. Once a ban or plan comes out, you can go to the bank and secure financing. Policy influences the market forecasts and can change how you present your business as an opportunity to investors. Along similar lines, policies can introduce new opportunities for innovation. Municipalities in the region also look at other municipalities and see what's working and what might be worth replicating. This can open up opportunities to expand operations in our region. Collaboration begins with building relationships and understanding the goals and the context in which we are operating. We hope that this session creates an opportunity for you all to begin building relationships with one another, but to also better understand how you can work with one another. Back over to you.
Thanks so much, Alice. Wow, that was a great summary. I'm very impressed. And we have a great base understanding now of what is and what is not policy and how we can move this discussion along today. So with that, I'd like to introduce Andrea McKenzie, who is a zero waste project engineer with the City of Vancouver. Andrea develops and implements policy in support of the City of Vancouver's vision to become a zero waste community by 2040. And to this, she brings a multidisciplinary perspective, thanks to her work as an engineer, but also has a social science master's in environmental policy. Andrea is the technical lead for Vancouver's single-use item reduction strategy and is currently leading the development of the city's shopping bag bylaw support plan and also the share reuse repair plan work program. She also volunteers as a technical expert on the Canadian Mirror Committee to the International Organization for Standardization Technical Committee 323 to develop standards in the fields of the circular economy. Oh, I didn't know that, Andrea. How very interesting. Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes, you're good.
Thanks. Okay. Thank you for that introduction, Rosemary. I'm going to present, actually, first, I just want to apologize for the stretching on the slides here, a little bit of unexpected stretch, but that's okay. So I'm going to give some background about what actions the city is already doing around share reuse repair and what we've got coming up. Next slide, please. I'm going to start with a bit of a policy background. Next slide. So Vancouver City Council adopted Zero Waste 2040 in June 2018 to establish a vision of Vancouver becoming a zero waste community by 2040. And we describe a zero waste community as one that supports sustainable resource use, a healthy economy, affordability, vibrant and inclusive neighborhoods, and equal opportunity through the elimination of solid waste. Next slide. Sorry. The vision of a zero waste community, of course, encompasses more than just waste and materials management. And one of the things that it calls for is a circular economy. Next slide. So we know that share reuse repair is critical in a circular economy and that it will help us to achieve our zero waste goal. And for that reason, the Zero Waste 2040 strategic plan includes a priority action to grow share, reuse, and repair activities in Vancouver. Next slide. So I'll present some of the tools and authorities that can help to support share, reuse, repair activities. And specifically, I'm going to describe the different kinds of authorities that are available at each level of government. Some tools are well suited to be implemented by local government, but others call for involvement and leadership from more senior levels of government. Next slide. And I should also just say these examples are not an exhaustive list, so there could be many other items that we could add to these tables. At the federal level, this is where there is authority to regulate product labeling and impose export and import controls. And at the provincial level, many of you may be familiar with their authority to regulate extended producer responsibility programs. And then, of course, at the provincial level, they also they are responsible to grant certain authorities and powers to City of Vancouver and Metro Vancouver and other local governments in BC. Next slide. So at the regional level, and Karen Storry will be speaking to some of this in quite a bit more detail, but just briefly, Metro Vancouver has regulatory responsibility for the Integrated Solid Waste and Resource Management Plan. They run a network of regional recycling and waste centers. They have the authority to impose disposal bans, and they can regulate private solid waste facilities through licensing. And then finally, at the City of Vancouver, we have authority to regulate business license holders through our license bylaw. And we can regulate collection program requirements through the solid waste bylaw. Of course, we have authority for zoning and land use, though I will say I'm not an expert in that area at this time, but I have more to learn there. And we own and operate the Vancouver transfer station and landfill and 2 zero waste centers. Next slide. Some other tools that I'll highlight, and these can be particularly important at the local and regional level, but they can also be applicable at more senior levels of government. So public awareness and behavior change campaigns are an important one. Programs and events, of course, and then local government and regional government have a role to play in publishing information and resources for residents and businesses. And then finally, a key one is public procurement policy. Next slide. So the city already has several actions for share reuse repair underway, and these tend to be part of existing zero waste programs and strategies, such as the single-use item reduction strategy. But they do give an idea of the kinds of tools and authorities we have as local government. Next slide. So the first category I'll talk about is policy and regulation, and some examples here are the bylaws for single-use beverage cups and shopping bags, which start on January 1st, 2022. So those are coming up. And they include fees on single-use options to try and encourage consumers to bring your own bag and bring your own cup for more purchases. But the single-use beverage cup bylaw also includes a reporting requirement that is designed to be a driver for businesses to participate in reusable cup share programs. So if they do participate in a reusable cup share program, then they are exempt from the requirement to report the number of cups they give out each year. I'll also highlight an example from our donation bin bylaw. So this addition to the bylaw came from research that we did with the Leverage Lab Collaborative for Textiles. And we learned that donation bins and thrift stores and other clothing collectors can sometimes use language like gently used or pre-loved to describe what items they accept for donation. And research finds that this is a little bit too vague and confusing for consumers and can lead to items that could have been reused and recycled actually getting thrown away. And so to try and counteract that a bit, we included a requirement in the donation bin bylaw that bins must display signage that says all clothes, shoes, and linens can be donated provided they are clean and dry. So just trying to be a little bit more clear. Next slide. So the next area that I want to share some examples from is collection infrastructure. So there's our reuse and recycling drop-off events where we partner with organizations to repair and reuse the collected materials as much as possible. An exciting example is also the Deconstruction Hub. This is for reusing salvaged construction materials. It's operated independently from the city, but the startup funding was awarded through a city-run RFP process, and it's allocated from the city's 2018 Innovation Fund. And then a more recent example is our pilot to collect reusable shopping bags. So we collected bags in good condition donated by residents and businesses, and then provide those to local nonprofits for reuse. Next slide. So outreach and education is the next category. Two examples here are the free repair workshops and zero waste place school workshops. Another one that is launching later today or tomorrow, I believe, is our public awareness campaign on the single-use item bylaws. And so this campaign will include messaging to encourage residents to bring your own cup and bring your own bag. But it will also include some messaging that encourages residents to gift extra reusable bags to their neighbors through platforms like Buy Nothing groups or donate bags to local nonprofits for reuse. Next slide. And the last category here is just about publishing information for residents. So the example is our Vancouver Waste Wizard, which we update on an ongoing basis to include options for reuse whenever and wherever we become aware of them. And then one that we're working on next is a list of options for where you can donate reusable shopping bags for reuse directly to nonprofit. Next slide. So now I'll describe what are the next steps the city is taking on share, reuse, repair. Next slide. So we're going to start with a literature review and jurisdiction scan, and the goal here is to generate a list of potential actions that support share, reuse, repair. And the next step after that is a preliminary assessment to just look at, really, is this action well suited for local government to pursue, and specifically for City of Vancouver, and then also look at other criteria like the expected level of impact and like an order of magnitude kind of cost estimate and different criteria like that to just filter the actions a little bit. And then we would also be seeking input from stakeholders on the potential actions, and that could be through forums like this one, or it could be through a more formalized consultation process that's still to be determined. Next slide. So just to give an idea of some of the potential actions that we'll be exploring through that research and that we hope to include in that list of options. One of them is to launch a public-facing database or map of share, reuse, repair assets in Vancouver, just to help residents connect with these different services. But we need to take a look at what are the options for hosting and maintaining that kind of database over time. There could also be new outreach and education programs that we look at. New programs are typically preceded by a lot of pilots and testing before we adopt them on an ongoing basis. And then we'll also be looking at developing a plan for allocating space for property to enable share, reuse, repair activities. Next slide. So that's the end for me. My contact information is there, and then it will show up again at the very end of the slide deck as well after all the speakers. If you have any questions, even after this forum, or information that you want to share with me, please feel free to reach out. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Andrea. I know I have questions, but I want to open the door up, the Zoom door, if you like, to anyone in the room. You can either, we don't have a super large group here, we have 41 people. So if you'd like to unmute yourself or raise your hand, please, and then you can unmute yourself and ask the question directly of Andrea. If you'd prefer to ask the question in the chat room, you can do that and I can ask the question for you. But to get the ball rolling, Andrea, big picture question. Lots of exciting things underway. I'm thrilled to see that, obviously, given a focus on the share, reuse, repair. But if you were to kind of, undergo this process and look 5 years into the future, what do you hope the share, reuse, repair sector will look like in Vancouver? And how will municipal policy figure into that? I'm asking you to jump 5 years into the future. I'm curious to see what you see or hope to see.
Oh, I mean, this is a fun question. I don't know if I have like a great local government talking head policy answer, but just like my personal feelings about this is, yeah, I would love to see a city where share, reuse, repair is a big part of the culture. And I think what I'd be most excited to see that play out is it really at the neighborhood level. So like existing in a community in Vancouver, part of what that community means to you and how you experience it is through share, reuse, repair activities. And that means there's space in your neighborhood for those activities. And you are at least somewhat well informed about where to get information about share, reuse, repair activities. And it's sort of just part of your daily activities.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. Yeah, I mean, I think when I look at all the things together, you're putting, we'll see what happens, but the things that you've proposed and put in place, I've certainly seen in other places create that foundation so share, reuse, repair can become part of a normal part of daily life. And ideally even the default. So I do have some questions in here from Sonia Patel. What drove the share, reuse, repair culture to develop in Vancouver? How can we replicate this effort in other municipalities? Thanks, Sonia. Great question.
That is a great question. I mean, my first thought is I don't know if we have a strong enough share reuse repair culture yet. So how did it develop? Like, how did we get to where we are now with some of the actions we have underway already? Like, I'll be candid, I've only lived in Vancouver for 5 years, so I can't speak very knowledgeably to the whole history of what led us here, but I would hazard a guess that a big part of at least the city's actions up to this point around share reuse repair likely come from the policy setting of the Greenest City Action Plan, and everything that came from there. So I would hazard a guess that that's a big step. And then just speaking to where does a local culture generally come from, I would say it probably also comes from a lot of community groups and really engaged residents who say, I want to see something in my neighborhood. I'm gonna pilot it, I'm gonna test it, I'm gonna hold an event and make it happen. I think that's a really important part of developing local culture as well.
Thanks, Andrea. I think to give kudos to the city's Greenest City Action Plan, one of the 10 pillars is a lighter living goal. And that opens the door up, and that is, frankly, quite incredibly progressive for a city. So, okay, lots of other questions here coming in. Here's one from Jennifer. Jennifer is with Perk Eco, and we recycle coffee shop waste. How can I plan to support getting the word out about the 25-cent coffee cup fee? I'd love to support on social media. Can I engage with the City of Vancouver employees doing that outreach?
Yes, so our public awareness campaign around the bag and cup bylaws is launching maybe later today, but I think tomorrow. I'm not the one like hitting the send button on pushing everything out, but it's imminent. And there's a lot of materials included in that that could be shared on social media and other platforms. I think in our business toolkit that is already on the website, there are other graphics that could be shared on social media. So I'll drop the link for our reduced single-use webpage into the chat. But there's definitely assets there you could use. And yeah, if you're looking for something additional that you don't find on the website, yeah, probably best to just send me an email and I'll see if there's something. But yeah, I think most of it's probably on the website.
Okay, thanks, Andrea. Another question from Aaron. Aaron, I'm assuming if you have your hand up, you want to ask that directly.
Yes, good morning, Andrea. I was just wondering what policies or perhaps program models have you heard about that close the loop on textiles that are no longer repairable or reusable? I'm just thinking about rags and old iron. People used to walk through the streets and gather those materials for upcycling in a different era. And I'm just wondering what thoughts you have on that.
We have a whole white paper that Karen Storry and I wrote about this, so I can send that to you. But just briefly, there's definitely not a single silver bullet in terms of policy. I think what we found through the research we did with the Leverage Lab Collaborative for Textiles is that there's a role for all the different stakeholders across the system in terms of what role can local government play and regional government play. Some of the things we looked at are helping to support with that collection network, and then public awareness, education, behavior change campaigns, these kinds of things, repair workshops. But yeah, definitely not a single silver bullet. And I think a lot of it actually also needs to come from new business models and ways of doing things, which how can that be successful? Well, you need a culture shift, and policy can help to affect a culture shift. So it's all kind of enmeshed together. I can also drop the link for our white paper. And Karen, if you have anything like you want to add to that, that's a really good answer. Feel free.
No, I mean, I might just plug our Think Thrice campaign. I'll cover it in my presentation, but we do a lot of work to try to encourage behavior change.
Great. There's another question that builds on the one that I asked, and that is, What's the biggest barrier or challenge that you see to achieving the 5-year goal of creating a share, reuse, repair, a more vibrant share, reuse, repair culture?
So first, I'll just do a bit of a pedantic correction. We don't have like a city adopted 5-year goal. I think that was just the framing of Rosemary's question, is where do you imagine you are in 5 years? That's not a specific goal. We do have the zero waste 2040 goal. But anyway, so speaking to one of the I don't know what the biggest barrier challenge is. That probably depends on the business and the product type, but I'll speak to one that is a huge challenge in Vancouver and elsewhere in other cities, is just knowing that space is at a premium here. And so when we talk about space for share, reuse, repair activities, I think that's something we really need to crack wide open and better understand. And one idea about this, and the city has suggested this to the National Zero Waste Council, but suggesting that they might be a great entity to undertake a study that looks at what are the land use needs in a circular economy versus a linear economy, just understanding at the city level, what does the actual space look like in a circular economy, and how do we need to work towards that when we think about big plans like Vancouver Plan, and the folks working on Vancouver Plan are also thinking about this. This is an idea that the Zero Waste team brought to the table in the early stages of Vancouver Plan. So yeah, I think space is probably a very important headline for like challenges to talk about.
Great. Yeah, I just want to let you know that it's come up in some of the previous events. I just saw lots of nodding heads and thumbs up. And so I think your space is definitely great to hear that that's underway. I think there's lots of enthusiastic folks in the room saying excited to hear where that goes. So I'm going to ask one more question that kind of groups what I'm hearing. It's a little bit more of a technical question, Andrea, so it might speak to your engineering background. Couple of just questions around materials, wondering if there's any news around whether there might be an opportunity to develop composting facilities for compostable plastics. Noticing a lot of businesses using them, but feeling like, you know, they contaminate waste streams. And then another question, a little bit related, has there been a life cycle assessment of the benefits and drawbacks of paper versus plastic bags? i.e. the extra carbon impact and weight for paper bags outweighs the lack of plastic bag recycling schemes. So some tech questions there. How does the city sort of tackle those questions related to specific materials?
So I'm going to speak to both of these from the lens of the single-use item reduction strategy, though they go beyond that because, of course, compostable plastic, paper and plastic is for all kinds of packaging, not just single-use items. But from the experience on developing the single-use item reduction bylaws, we took the approach that our goal was to go up the waste hierarchy to avoid the generation of single-use item waste in the first place through reuse as a main mechanism to get there. So encouraging people to bring your own cup, bring your own bag, and just substituting one single-use material for another, like shifting from plastic to paper or plastic to compostable plastic, that won't get us all the way to zero waste. So yeah, really looking for going up the hierarchy. But of course we did investigate both of these questions that are raised, compostable plastics and the life cycle assessment of plastic versus paper. So I can talk about compostable plastics for a really long time, but I'll try and keep it more brief. So we did retain a consultant, Dylan, to do a bit of a technical investigation into compostable plastics. And so they did a literature review looking at the different standards and certifications for compostable plastics. So we understood that as a first step, what's out there right now. And then they also did a bit of a infrastructure review of compost facilities in and around Metro Vancouver to understand how are they currently able to accept compostable plastics? Do they have confidence that those get broken down and fully biodegraded in their facility, and these kinds of questions. And what we learned from this is that the design standards for compostable plastic right now are, and then the certifications that are assessing does a product meet those design standards, they're inadequate because they don't reflect the real life infrastructure that's available, particularly in our region. I mean, I can't speak to globally, but I do think this is a bit of a global issue. So a plastic can be certified as compostable plastic if it takes up to 90 days to disintegrate fully and up to 180 days to biodegrade fully. But our facilities for compost like composting facilities in and around Metro Vancouver are designed and operated to process food waste and yard trimmings, and those break down a lot faster. So basically they just have a much shorter operating time, and to slow down the whole process, to hold on to the materials long enough to get the full disintegration and biodegradation for compostable plastic, we would have a huge capacity problem, because like the throughput of organics into our facility, it's coming in all the time, and we can't slow down the whole machine to compost compostable plastics, particularly in large volumes. Then you can get some issues with, if they're all stacked into each other, they also won't biodegrade as well. So it's an infrastructure problem, but it's not an easy one to solve because it's hugely expensive to build new facilities, larger facilities. It's hard to site a compost facility. So to realistically see like compostable plastics as a large scale solution for single-use item waste, we would need a huge investment in compost facilities, and that would need to be funded in some way, which is beyond the capacity of local government to do. Or we need design standards that are more in tune with what the actual compost facilities, how they're operated. That was probably still a really long answer.
No, thanks, Andrea. That was,
I don't know how to talk about compostable plastics succinctly.
Yeah, it's a very large topic. You know,
Yeah.
I think that we could keep on going. And what I'm going to instead do is I'm going to say that if anybody wants to continue the conversation with Andrea, and I think there's lots of interest, there's going to be an opportunity for a breakout room that Andrea is going to be in, and you can join and we can continue to ask further questions.
But speak briefly to the life cycle assessment question as well. Sorry, and I can do this one more succinctly.
No worries.
So we did look at this, and you will find LCA studies for single-use plastic bags versus paper bags versus reusable bags. And of course, they're going to show you that the life cycle impact for a plastic bag is lower compared to a paper bag and a reusable bag if you're assuming all of those items are only used once. So a reusable bag, it will show you need to reuse it hundreds or sometimes even thousands of times, depending on how they did the study and what the assumptions were. So yeah, it's better to keep using a single-use plastic bag if you're going to get a new reusable bag every single time at the checkout. But that's not the behavior change that we're going for. We're looking for people to reuse the bags that they already have. And we've learned from some research that Metro Vancouver has done, as well as our experience with the collection pilot for reusable shopping bags, that there's a lot of reusable shopping bags out there in the world already. Most people already own at least one, probably several in their home. So it's not a case of using a reusable shopping bag means that you're having that environmental impact every time. It just means just use the thing you already have, like bring it with you to the store, work on that behavior change, and that's the biggest environmental win. And this, in terms of plastic versus paper, yeah, we know paper bags don't get reused multiple times. There's like a durability issue there. But then the issue we're looking at is plastic pollution in the environment versus paper, which will break down in the environment. So it's not a simple solution, but the status quo of relying on single-use plastic bags, I don't think is the answer.
Great, thanks to you, Andrea. I think Andrea is showing the depth of knowledge that she has in this area and also the complexity. What I heard from that is make sure that we have really well-made reusable shopping bags that last, and let's keep on using them. And if you're not using them, if you've got 20 in your cupboard at home, make sure you pass those on so somebody else can use them. Again, there's going to be an opportunity to jump in and ask more questions. I'm sorry, there are more in the chat room, but jump into the breakout room with Andrea and keep the conversation going. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Meg.
Thanks, Andrea, so much. I mean, what I heard through that discussion was that our community of entrepreneurs in the circular economy can rest assured these policies are being developed as a result of really in-depth technical and scientific study. So they are not following the political whim of the moment. They are really grounded in evidence-based research. And we should feel reassured that although sometimes policy development takes time, it's because they really want to nail it and get it right for the planet and for the people. Okay, my soapbox is over. I'm going to put out the soapbox to Karen Storry. Karen is a senior project engineer for Metro Vancouver in solid waste services. As a civil engineer in her training, Karen worked on the construction of the Canada Line Rapid Transit Tunnel before transitioning to solid waste planning at Metro Vancouver. So she's been a member of the region's zero waste implementation team for more than a decade, and Karen's worked on a variety of waste reduction and prevention programs and policies. Especially, she was the technical lead for Metro Vancouver's award-winning textiles waste reduction campaign, Think Thrice About Your Clothes, which has already been posted in the chat there. And she was the lead for the research and development of Metro Vancouver's single-use item reduction toolkit, which I think we'll hear a little bit about in her presentation. Karen, thank you for joining us. Please take the floor.
Sorry, when I share my screen, the mute button moves and then I can't find it. Okay, thank you for having me here today to talk about waste as a resource and the circular economy policies and programs at Metro Vancouver. And before I get into it, I just want to talk a little bit about our region. And so we have 23 members, which are shown on this slide. City of Vancouver is one of them. And we represent a growing region of currently 2.7 million people. It's over half of the population of BC. We represent over 60% of BC's GDP and 1.3-ish million jobs. So we're a pretty big region and we have a lot of influence on what happens in the region through our solid waste management plan, which I'll get into that in a second. So we collaborate with our members to reduce waste and perform many other functions, as you can see on this very confusing slide. We have member jurisdiction staff, advisory committees, board standing committees, and the Metro Vancouver board, which is probably the most important because they are our decision-making body. So kind of to add to what Meg said, not only do we do a lot of research like Andrea, but we also have a very robust committee system that we run everything through. With respect to solid waste planning, Metro Vancouver is responsible for waste reduction, recycling, planning, and the operations of a series of solid waste facilities in the region. And we're working hard to move to a circular economy. This is to meet the high environmental stewardship expectations of our residents in an affordable way. And that's an important piece for us so that everyone can continue to participate in our regional waste reduction and management systems. And in order to achieve a circular economy, we employ a range of both policies and programs. For example, one of our key policies is disposal bans, and banned items, if brought to our recycling and waste centers instead of the many other options, I would like to say, in the region, you have to pay more. And so that's an incentive for businesses and residents to make use of the many reuse and recycling businesses and programs that are in the region instead of placing everything in the garbage. And I'll touch on these throughout the presentation, but we also do a lot of research, have a lot of data, publish toolkits, and do a lot of behavior change campaigns, as has already come up in this session. So I thought instead of reading off all the policies, I would tell the story of the organics disposal ban, because for me, I think it's really interesting, and it actually highlights a lot of the things that Ellis mentioned in her introduction that local governments use to make change. And so the timeline for the organics disposal ban work actually extends beyond this slide. Prior to 2008, there was very little organics recycling in the region. And in 2008, Metro Vancouver ran a competitive process to attract a regional organics processing facility to the region, and that was successful. And so back in 2008, in collaboration with our members through a put or pay contract, we had our first regional recycling of organics through the curbside programs to keep organics out of the garbage, which is very important from a climate change perspective, because organics going to disposal, especially the landfill, can result in a high release of methane, which is a very powerful greenhouse gas. And so we started with the put or pay contract, and then after that, we started working with what we call large commercial producers of organics waste, and what everyone else just calls hotels, restaurants, and grocery stores, to educate them about organics diversion. And so, as you can see by this slide, we started to see a ramp up in the organics being diverted in the region. And then by the time we actually put in the disposal ban in 2015, we were already diverting over 300,000 tons of organic material in the region. And we saw the late adopters come on board once we did put in our policy. You can see, like, many people were keen to do it, but we're waiting for the policy. Many people told us because the policy was coming, they were able to make the business case to divert their organics. And then some people waited until the policy was in place. So this slide just depicts that and how our policies can make a really big difference to what happens in terms of circular economy in the region. And I just want to highlight a couple of the success stories. So currently Metro Vancouver doesn't own or operate any organics facilities. It's all done by others. And Storry Biofuel started as a private-public partnership, providing an opportunity for the private industry to build and operate the facility. It's also connected to Fortis, so we're able to create green biofuel as per the name of the facility, which decreases the region's dependence on fossil fuels. Another favorite of mine is in Langley. There is a black soldier fly farm that started as an innovative way to reduce organics waste. They feed the organics to the flies, which produce larvae, which can be used to feed fish and used as a protein for feeding other animals, which is much more sustainable than the other ways they were getting this material, like just devastating fishing practices and other approaches. And the castings also make a great fertilizer, so you still get that fertilizer. So I think that's a great example of how you can increase the value of something and be innovative around how you divert. And now there's too many private organics facilities managing regional organics to list, but there's been a lot of opportunity from that disposal ban to divert organics, and many other companies that have come up that aren't even in the direct processing of organics, but collection in other areas. And I wanted to highlight, because we do all these things for each program. And so with our disposal ban, we also have our food scraps recycling campaign. And while these are business agnostic, they help shift consumer behavior towards more circular products and services. So for example, for our food scraps aren't garbage campaign, the focus is on the green bin at home, but the habits translate to using organics bin in other places like hotels, restaurants, events, and university campuses. And so that's the story of organics and what we did around that. And I hope it provides you with some information in terms of what Metro Vancouver can do to encourage a circular economy. And these are our toolkits that we have that I wanted to highlight today. So our construction and demolition toolkit is a great resource. If you're building something new and you expect to have C&D waste, please check it out. Our single-use item reduction toolkit is not really focused on business, but I often refer businesses to page 7 for guidance on how to select. Reusable is a preference, but also serviceware, if you need single-use serviceware, that is readily accepted in our recycling and composting facilities in the region. And I just wanted to make a shout out to our National Zero Waste Council, which is a Metro Vancouver initiative. They have more tools for businesses as well, and we lean on them. And they also have a specific toolkit for businesses that are looking to go more circular. It's geared to those that are just starting on their circular journey. Although I think of myself as a bit of a circular economy expert, and I always learn stuff when I reread it. So never too expert to read that. We also have some of the most detailed waste composition monitoring reports in North America for you data nerds. And we also publish annual reports to help businesses make informed decisions and understand the disposal rates for different materials. The most common way circular businesses are using this information is to understand how much of the material, such as carpet, is still left in the waste that they could target and capture with their business, and also to communicate to their customers the size of the challenge that they're trying to address. Like, for example, through a waste composition monitoring program, we know that Metro Vancouverites throw out over 1 billion single-use items per year. So we have some pretty impressive stats through our data program. Okay, so I've talked about data, which I like, and the history of organics, but I've also been asked to talk a little bit about the future. And so my latest project is managing the region's Circular Economy in 3 Rs program, and we hope to have it published in Q1 or Q2. We're doing a lot of things new, so it might take us a while, but it will be really great. And in the past, we focused around waste minimization and recycling with our plans and our work, but as we move forward with our work, we'll be looking into not only how to reduce waste, but how to connect it to greenhouse gas reduction, how to connect it to other important environmental considerations. Andrea already mentioned persistence in environment of the plastics. That's an important one. How to connect it to regional prosperity, and also how to connect it to social cohesion, so we can do these all these things together. So it's a bit of a tall order for sure, but I think we're long overdue to connect all of these dots. So I'm not going to read this out, but I'm just going to leave this up there to kind of stoke conversation. Maybe you want to ask me about some of these things when the questions open, or maybe you want to talk to us about these trends that we're seeing when we open up the floor for the workshop portion. And then this is my last slide. So if you think I missed something or want to provide feedback, I'm happy to chat with you directly. But one of the best things you can do is to participate in the update of our solid waste management plan. The updated plan will guide our region's policies and collective actions over the next decade and beyond. And so as we do this, there will be several opportunities to provide feedback, and I'll put the link into the chat so that you can sign up directly and make sure you don't miss anything. We send out newsletters to update everyone. There's also an opportunity to be part of the Public Technical Advisory Committee. So if you're interested in getting really involved, the application process for that will open up next month. And that's my dog barking, which I was wondering if that was going to happen. Hold on a second. Okay, almost made it to the end. And yeah, so I'll put those in the chat along with my email address. And then with that, I'd just like to thank you for your attention and hand it over to whoever is going to do the moderating of this Q&A.
It's me, Karen. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That was a really incredible presentation. I learned a lot about the ways that different sort of policy spheres interact and the work coming forward through Metro Vancouver. So thank you so much. We've had a comment in the chat there from Taylor, who is one of the co-founders of Bin Breeze. Bin Breeze has taken advantage of one of the regulatory changes that's been happening on Vancouver Island, and it's a circular economy manufacturing startup. It only exists because of organic waste programs like those you described. So proof is in the pudding. There's a lot of opportunity that's created when policy is really driving change, particularly around waste management and waste or materials treatment. We have a question in the chat that I'll pose here. And again, a reminder to everybody, though, this is being recorded. You can post a question in the chat, or you can put up your hand here and I'll call on you to speak to your own question. So the first question from the chat is, Karen, what other cities or regions and policymakers are inspiring you and your team?
Yeah, so we participate in the National Zero Waste Council Circular Regions Initiative, and also I've had the opportunity to work and be part of a couple of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation calls. And some of my favorite things that I've seen so far are Circular Charlotte. So they have a whole comprehensive program that's posted on their website. I'm also quite jealous of Austin, Texas. They have a program which I don't think as a regional district we could do, but perhaps someone could do it. It's a reverse pitch where they pitch a waste stream and then they have funding for a company to find a creative, innovative solution so it doesn't go to waste anymore. And I'm just going to stop myself there because I would love to talk to anyone about all of these things all day long, but I don't want to go too far on all of my answers.
Well, you hear that, everybody? Karen's open. You can contact her through the chat function here, or we'll post her email address at the end of the session. And she wants to hear from you, especially if you have something really smart that might solve some of our waste challenges and our circular economy opportunities here in the Lower Mainland. Okay, so Karen, with so many education-based campaigns that you've helped to design for the public, what are some of the biggest misconceptions you've heard about the circular economy? And is there a role for businesses to play in helping to educate and I guess mitigate some of these misconceptions?
Well, yeah, I guess the easiest one to share is a lot of people think that the circular economy is recycling on steroids. And just a little bit, I just received the email yesterday from, I'm going to shut this door. Sorry, the dog was on the patio. Anyway, so I just received the email with the economic analysis for a circular economy in 3R study. And I can tell you that remanufacturing is really the big opportunity, and that will help keep jobs local. And that is something that I think we really need to explore. And we know from a carbon perspective as well, as we start looking at embodied carbon and not just local emissions, that all of a sudden reuse and repair become very attractive solutions. And I wrote a report about that to our committee, so I'm happy to share it. And there's my puppy that is part of the work from home Zoom experience.
You could maybe even talk about the animal waste project that's underway in select areas where you can drop your doggy bags in, certain containers. It's a circular economy initiative.
It is. Look for the red bin programs. They started in the regional parks and now they're in several of the cities throughout Metro Vancouver, which I started on like 10 years ago, and now there's red bins everywhere, which is great. But now I can own a dog.
So change takes time, but it is happening. Awesome. Okay, there's a question posted from Rosie that's in the chat here, but I think we can speak to it before we go into our breakout rooms. And it also points to one of the other breakout rooms. We're going to hear from Julie-Anne next, talking about city business partnerships for circularity. And the question is, did the city of Surrey start the Surrey biofuel program with an open bid RFP to find the right partner? And what did the city bring to that partnership versus the business partner bringing, their efforts? Do you know much about it, or where would you?
You know what? I didn't really do my homework, and I was just proud of City of Surrey for doing that project. So whoever asked that question, please email me, and I'll connect you with the City of Surrey staff that did that project. But basically everything Metro Vancouver and our member jurisdictions do in terms of public procurement is through very strict purchasing policies. And so I can almost all but guarantee that it was a competitive process of some sort that they did in order to qualify who would run the facility and who would build it. And City of Surrey posts all of their bids online as to who wins. So you could probably find it pretty easily on their bid website.
And bcbids.ca is a great site to look at for municipal and regional bids or government-based bids, period, that are going out to ask for innovations and for folks in the business community as well to step forward and really contribute in a meaningful and tangible way. Thanks, Alice, for posting that. Karen, awesome. Thank you so much. Karen will also be joining us in the breakout room. So stick around, build your question list up for her, and you can join us in that room when we are finished with our presentations. We've one more to go, and I'm going to pass to Rosie to get that ball rolling.
Thanks so much. In a former life, I worked on public-private partnerships at Metro Vancouver, and yes, it had to all go through the procurement process. So next, I would like to introduce Julie-Anne Toda. And Julie-Anne is a business development liaison at the City of Richmond. And she's part of their economic development team for Richmond, a fast-growing urban center with the goal of creating a roadmap to realizing a true circular economy. Julie-Anne has 12 years of experience in local government and is passionate about implementing policies and initiatives in support of the local economy and business community. Welcome, Julie-Anne.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Julie-Anne Toda, and I'm the Business Development Liaison in the City of Richmond's Economic Development Office. Thank you, everyone, for having me here today. It's very exciting. I'm going to speak on the Richmond Food Recovery Network that we created in partnership with Food Mesh. I'm very passionate about this program, and I'm thrilled to speak about it whenever possible. I should mention before we get going that I do not have a background in sustainability or environmental programs. Rather, I have more experience working with businesses and connecting them to these municipal resources and experts. I like to think of my position with the City of Richmond as a social conduit for businesses to use. So if you're looking to set up in Richmond, please use me, and I will put my email in the chat when we are complete. Next slide, please. Okay, so agri-foods is a significant sector for our provincial economy. We have 2,500 businesses that produce value-added food products worth over $9 billion. These products are sold to local, national, and international markets. In Richmond, that sector is highly represented, and businesses span the entire value chain from farming to manufacturing, processing, packaging, distribution, and retail. We do everything. Meanwhile, we know that there is far too much food produced in Canada that is never consumed. Over half of that waste is avoidable, but under current models, it's currently discarded because it's easier and cheaper to waste than to redistribute it. So we saw an opportunity to support our agri-food sector in keeping perfectly good food in the supply chain by giving businesses the tools to do so. We were also supported in this goal by a strong council mandate around economic development, sustainability, and circular economy. Next slide, please. So in November of 2019, Richmond partnered with Food Mesh on a one-year project to create an online network for local food manufacturers, processors, and retailers to create value from what otherwise would have been a waste in their operations. This involved an app-based exchange platform that allowed food businesses and farmers to sell any surplus or off-spec food to other businesses or donate them to local charities or social groups, whatever was easier for them. Next slide, please. Okay, so this slide I think is going to be the most important for businesses. So this is how Food Mesh did a really great job of getting my attention and the City of Richmond's attention with their proposal. So they originally approached us in 2018 with their proposal to start a food recovery network in Richmond. This proposal that they gave us clearly defined the issue at hand, the goals that it would achieve, targets, what their deliverables would be through the program, and all the fees. Maybe most importantly, though, is that they spoke to how the program would tie into Richmond Council's strategic plan, the Richmond Food Charter, and the Metro Vancouver Regional Food Systems Action Plan. They really did their homework, and they presented a clear and concise proposal that made it easy for us to present to other departments and to council for buy-in. You may not be aware, but the community charter generally prohibits local governments from assisting businesses. We were concerned about this as Food Mesh is technically an incorporated for-profit social enterprise. However, we discussed it with our law department in depth, and they determined that we could enter into a partnering agreement if we publicly posted our intent of doing so through a notice of intent to partner on BC bid. So just with this in mind, you may experience a few roadblocks and hurdles when trying to get your proposal heard to staff. My suggestion is to try to find a staff member who will champion your program. Easier said than done, I know. These things, they're not always easy to get moving, so you will need someone who is keen to push your program through. Remember that even if you have the greatest proposal, sometimes it just doesn't work out with municipalities' budgets or staff time or their work plan. It's never a bad thing, though, to make people aware of your product. Perhaps it might not work out this year, but we can definitely keep it in mind for next year. Next slide, please. So after receiving council endorsement wholeheartedly, they loved our program. We issued a notice of intent to partner on BC bid for 2 weeks to see if it would solicit any other proposals. None came in, so we were cleared to partner with Food Mesh. The program officially launched in November 2019, which turned into be an extremely timely time for our community as it was the start of the pandemic. This program took a lot of strong partnerships to get started and to ensure that it was successful. The partnerships supported goals in Richmond's Council's strategic plan to create a sustainable and environmentally conscious city that demonstrates leadership by exploring and implementing innovative new ideas. We're also really proud of the strong cross-functional partnership that happened within our municipality. This was a team effort that touched many different overarching goals and included economic development, community social development, environmental programs, and sustainability. And of course, it wouldn't have been a success without the 59 local businesses and organizations who joined the network and committed to using new ways of getting perfectly edible food to where it could be used. Next slide, please. So the cost of this program was a one-time fee of $25,000. This funding was used to educate and engage the private sector and social service agencies on the options to address food waste. It was also used for marketing, communications, and to provide a dedicated account manager to help onboard businesses and organizations onto the platform. The ultimate goal was to create a critical mass of users so that this two-sided marketplace would become self-sustaining and that the city's initial investment of dollars and resources would continue to generate value for our community in perpetuity. Next slide, please. So to create this critical mass of users, we undertook quite an extensive engagement program. This included a dedicated landing page on the Food Mesh website, the usual news releases, and social media campaigns. We also hosted 2 virtual webinars in partnership with Food Mesh, and we partnered with BC Food and Beverage Association on a virtual town hall about the circular supply chain in the food sector. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is my favorite slide. It just makes our program look really fun, but this initiative was the first of its kind in Metro Vancouver. So we did take a bit of a risk. We were confident that others would be as excited about it as we were, and that they would immediately see the benefits. We set some pretty lofty targets. For example, we wanted to divert 225,000 kilograms of food from waste streams and to secondary markets, and we wanted to create 300,000 meals. We're so pleased that, as you can see, we blew past our targets. In most cases, we even doubled or nearly doubled our original goals. We almost reached them at the halfway point, so we were just so thrilled with this program. We were also thrilled that the City of Richmond won the 2021 Community Project Award from the British Columbia Economic Development Association for our work in creating a local food network. Next slide, please. So we now have an online food recovery network that is self-sustaining, meaning that everyone on the platform can continue to use it and that new users can join in at any time. We also now have businesses that have been enabled and supported to adopt circularity into their operations and to create value from what was previously wasted. And Food Mesh has even been able to leverage this pilot to secure funding from Canada's Digital Technology Supercluster Initiative to take this program national. The COVID-19 program that they created aims to improve the health and safety of Canadians while creating a food share network that aims to rescue over 1.5 million meals each month to local food relief organizations. And even more recently, Metro Vancouver has supported the expansion of a regional food recovery network in partnership with Food Mesh. We're very proud of this program, the partnerships that were developed along the way, and the lasting legacies it will have on our community. We're available and happy to talk to any municipalities, and we have spoken with quite a few on this program so that we can share what we learned along the way. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Julie-Anne. So just a follow-up question that I'd like to ask, but I'm also curious if there are other questions from folks in the room. Again, just a reminder, you can raise your hand and unmute and ask the question directly, or you can also put the question in the chat. So one of the questions is this a single example of a city business partner in Richmond, or is this a regular practice in Richmond? Are you doing this in other areas?
So the Food Recovery Network is a single example, but we are partnering with many different businesses on different proposals that they bring forward. This is just one that I personally worked on and I'm very proud of.
And in those partnerships, are you going through the same approach? You know, you need to put the notice of intent on BC Bids for 2 weeks. And if another, sorry, my cat wants to partner with me. you've got a 2-week window, but if another business comes forward and says we're able to offer that same service, then what?
Yeah, so
It has
if
to
they
go to a
had come
competitive
forward-
process?
Yeah, it would be a competitive process. We can't single source a business, which is why we
Right.
had to put it on notice of intent that we were going to work with them, which allowed anyone who could give a proposal to us that was similar, that we would have to look at it and be like, would this meet our needs? Could they do it for the same amount of money? So it just has to be a fair and equal process for all businesses.
Okay, great. It is a tremendous example of a city business collaboration. Are any other questions about this from folks in the room? I guess one I would have, I'm looking for hands across my Zoom. What do you think is the biggest thing that you learned as a city on this journey by working, so closely with Food Mesh that you'd like to kind of pass on?
I think the biggest thing that I personally learned, because I'm not gonna lie, I was new to the circular economy when I started in economic development, but I was so pleased to learn the eagerness of businesses to participate in this. When we told them about it, it was a lot of yeses. We are eager to learn more. We want to participate however we can, or that they were already doing so through other channels. But it was quite heartwarming for me to see that.
Great, thank you. So I see a question from Taylor. Taylor, please unmute and ask away.
Hi. Yeah, I mean, basically, really cool story, and thanks so much for sharing, and really described kind of give me a little bit of hope that I might achieve a public-private partnership one day as well, because yeah, I mean, I as a company that makes an additive for people to treat food waste that is like waste. So they don't have to smell it or deal with it, but that's also kind of circular economy, I guess. I haven't really known how to create that partnership or who to approach about that, and so I appreciate hearing that we need to create an evangelist, but how should I go about doing that?
I think like a good way in Richmond is to use me, the business development liaison. And what my position does is, like, you may not know who all the contacts are within a municipality, but I do. So I can connect you with our sustainability department, our environmental programs department,
Right.
community social development, whoever. But what I do is I meet with a lot of businesses. They bring forward, they want to introduce me to their programs. They all sound incredible. Of course, I want to partner with everybody. But one of the next steps that I'll always say is, okay, can you put your program and proposal in writing to me so I can give it to our other departments? I'd say 50% of the businesses don't even do that. But what I need you to do is I need you to do your homework a little bit, and you need to tell me like everything that we went through, like
I actually I can rewatch the presentation as well, so that's great.
Yeah.
I would
So
love to connect to
but
it.
we
Thank
just
you.
need like the little details, like what are the goals, like how much is it going to cost, what is it achieving? And then I also, a huge tidbit is, like, if you can tie it into an action plan or our council goals or strategies, that makes my job so easy when I have to sell it to other departments. I'm like, we are mandated to do this, like we should work with them.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks. So Julie-Anne, I think I'm hearing there, make it easy for us on the,
Please.
on the city, but also make sure to tie it into our existing policies and plans and goals, which is that bridge that we're talking about today between what businesses are doing and city policies. I'm noticing that we should, I'm getting the prompt that we should finish up in a minute. Are there any other questions for Julie-Anne? Please raise your hand. Okay, I can't resist. I have to throw one out there to the folks from Metro and the City of Vancouver. Do you see this type of partnership that Julie-Anne has just described as being something, assuming that it goes through the required procurement process, as something that would help you achieve any of your goals, Andrea on share, reuse, repair, or Karen linked to the 3 Rs moving forward?
I mean, I think I have a boring answer, which is like, it depends. Yes, it absolutely can be a pathway that could lead to great solutions, but it's it's hard to make a blanket statement and say like, yep, this is the way for everything. It depends on the opportunity. Yeah, sorry, I don't have a more exciting answer.
No,
but
that's
it depends.
okay. I mean, I was just curious if it kind of prompted saying, oh, like that's we've got a whole bunch of approaches that we're doing, which are all valid and are moving things forward. Absolutely. But is this another tool in the toolbox that could help?
Yes,
Erin,
well,
any
just to
thoughts on
tie it a bit to Ellis's introduction, like municipalities can be inspired by others, so local governments can be inspired for others. So Metro Vancouver actually went forward after seeing the great work of the Fraser Valley Regional District and City of Vancouver with a procurement process for a food recovery network. And the successful proponent of that process was Food Mesh as well. And so we're working on a regional network for food recovery, which is extremely exciting. And as we move forward, procurement will be a tool that we use when it makes sense. Just to kind of align with Andrea's answers, like it has to make sense, but and sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. But we encourage you and we like everyone that moves in a circular direction, whether or not it's through a city procurement or some other procurement.
Okay, great. Thanks, Karen. I think for those who want to dig into this topic further, you can join the breakout room with Julie-Anne. But with that, I'm actually going to hand it back over to Jill. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. And yeah, thanks to Andrea, Karen, and Julie-Anne for your time today and sharing your expertise with us. We're now going to shift into our breakout rooms. So each breakout room will have a facilitator from our partner team. That will be Rosemary, Michelle, or Meg, and a note taker, Alice, Brianna, or myself. We are going to have 3 breakout rooms, and we're asking that you choose which room you would like to attend based on what would be most beneficial to you. So as mentioned earlier, we will be following the Chatham House rules. So we welcome everyone to share candidly in these spaces. We really do want to hear from you. But after the meeting, you please bring up points that people spoke to, but please do not attribute them directly to individuals. So the options, these are just options, but we're hoping we can kind of narrow down the focus a little bit for these breakout rooms. Will be our first breakout room will be business and city partnerships. Second breakout room will be using waste as a resource. And the third breakout room will be increasing the sharing, reuse, and repair economy. So the breakout room options are going to pop up on your screen, and I'm just going to put the options in here. Should pop up on your screen. Please pick a room that you'd like to be in once it does. And we'll come back at 10:45 where we'll be discussing our call to action, which is what is the next big thing we need to crack to advance the circular economy as a collaboration between business and government. And then we'll close out the session and the series. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy your breakout rooms.
Are you there, Gil?
I am. Are you having trouble getting into a room?
I had turned my head away and then I missed the opportunity. It looks like the window disappeared on me.
Okay, Brianna, are you able to relaunch those?
I'm in the same situation. Thanks for pointing that out, Brian. It's Erin here.
No problem.
Me too. Jennifer here, and I'm having trouble getting into a room.
I don't think I saw a pop-up come up on mine.
Okay, no problem. I'm happy to try to manually sort people into breakout rooms. So if you want to pop into the chat which one you'd like to do, and I'm happy to put you into that breakout room if it's not popping up on your screen.
I can't remember what the options were for the breakout rooms. Can you remind us, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have business city partnerships, using waste as a resource, and increasing the share, reuse, repair economy.
So Erin, is there a specific one you'd like to go into? Or anyone who's in the main room right now? Erin, business partnerships. Okay, I can send you over.
This is Mike. Can you add me to the business partnerships as well?
No problem.
Thank you.
And Lori, Aaron. Oh, there we go. Lori, is there a room that you'd like to be in?
No, okay, Jill.
Okay.
I'll hop into the other breakout room, and then if anything comes up, I'll hop back in here, okay?
Sounds good, thanks.
Yeah.
Uh-oh, that did not work, Ram. Jill?
Yep, right here. I think we're all just coming back.
Okay.
Folks in my group, I'm sorry for that abrupt ending, and Daisy, you got cut off. I'm sorry about that. We were just getting into a whole other juicy topic.
Yes,
it sounded to me like Daisy was encouraging starting with elected officials and in terms of raising issues and proposals to the province. Daisy, feel free to chime in if that's not where you were headed.
No, that is pretty much where, I mean, in terms of trying to kind of pitch the kind of macroeconomy type changes that might be beneficial, elected officials, so the various ministers, so or the Premier, you know, Minister George Heyman is the Minister for Environment and Climate Change Strategy. And then there's also Minister Ralston is Minister for Energy, Mines and Low Carbon Innovation. And then there's the Minister for Finance. So basically, you know, there's all sorts of different elected officials that you could approach. Also finding people like, you know, myself or my colleague Erin and other contacts around the traps at the province who might be able to point you in the right direction of who to have a conversation with. You know, I definitely appreciate that provincial government and governments in general are pretty big places, and it can be hard to find the right person. So I would say that, you know, 9.5 times out of 10, if you just have a contact and say, hey, you're probably not the right person, but can you help me find the right person to have a conversation with? We usually do what we can to connect you. So those kinds of ideas, you know, kind of macro level ideas are worth bringing forward. You know, I can't ever make any guarantees that they'll you know, be taken up, but it's good to put them on various people's radar so that they're at least being, you know, considered in the grand scheme of things.
Thank you. Thanks for finishing that thought.
No worries.
Jill, back over to you, Jill. Sorry to take that time.
Can I also jump in that we were halfway through a thought in our breakout room too? I don't know, Jennifer, if you want to jump in. You just made a point about it would be really helpful for cities if they could acknowledge businesses, even pre-competitive. Do you want to jump in and add that? I was wanting to hear it.
Yeah, sure. So we talk, I'm hearing a lot of people who work for the cities talk about procurement and how they can support in that way. And that's all well and good, but that procurement process, that application process is always going to be probably a little red tapey and take time, and that's probably not going to go away, and because it should be there. But in any case, one of the things that can power forward a small business, especially someone who's innovating in a space where it seems strange, like there are a lot of circular materials that have these solutions to them. It's like, wow, that's new and different, and how is that going to scale? Especially in those scenarios like that. It can be very powerful for a circular economy innovator or business to be able to have the support of a city behind them and saying the City of Vancouver acknowledges and supports our program. Or, you know, the City of Richmond, you know, acknowledges and supports our program. Being able to say that as a founder or as a salesperson for one of these companies immediately makes the person you're pitching to, it qualifies you in their mind as a valid business. And when you're a small and plucky company coming up with a strange solution, that's a really powerful thing.
I know, Julie-Anne, you'd mentioned that it's possible at the City of Richmond to sort of use social media and, you know, include companies in blog posts. That's the way that you've been able to kind of get profile of some businesses out there. But I'm curious, and the other folks in the room, is that something a city can do? But what Jennifer has just mentioned, just to finish this thought off.
I have some experience with that, Rosemary.
Okay, thanks.
So one of the things we've been able to do with Project Greenlight is get permission from the city to say that, yes, the city did try this without having to say that we entered into a contract or without entering into an agreement. But we do have permission to promote that successful trial or proof of concept or pilot test.
Amazing.
And so, but that is, you had at this point had already jumped through some hoops, right? So you were let's call it a winner and got through the Project Greenlight program. So you weren't just, I think what you were implying was bidding. And you're beyond the bid process at this point. But anyways, that's a step forward, and something that we've already accomplished with the City of Vancouver, and I'm sure every other municipality could at least get that far. What we're also aware of course, is the legal liability of having to just acknowledge or support programs without any vetting. In previous generations, we could point to things like the good old Vancouver Stock Exchange and other less than above board organizations where the city could really get burned. So it's not that easy to take that on.
It's true. There's a lot of considerations that have to be made at the municipal level, and I'm sure at the regional and provincial as well, that will really decide or be the deciding factor on whether a city can name a business by name, right? But we have seen that happen in previous incidences, namely during the organics ban in 2015. The City of Vancouver, I believe, issued some sort of RFEOI, perhaps, expression of interest, to identify all of the businesses locally who could support with organics diversion implementation, and then published a list of all of those. So it wasn't preferential, it was open and fair. That's one example of how that happened. Of course, it didn't privilege just one business or one innovator, but maybe there's room for all of us too.
Okay, share another example there. We're
Guys,
doing a
I'm
similar.
really sorry. We're going to wrap. I know, right? All this to say, 2022 is going to be a big year for the Greater Vancouver Circular Economy Network, and we hope that you'll continue to join us in programming later on, where we get to dive into these even more and build more of that collaborative space between policymakers and businesses. We need your help. Our final segment here is to help us identify what are we going to work on. Like, let's narrow the focus a little bit and really try to move the needle on advancing circular economy in the Lower Mainland. So my question to the audience is, what would be the most beneficial challenge to tackle together in order to help support the advancement of circular economy? So businesses, if you've got a notion of what you really need in order to thrive in the circular economy, and policymakers, if you've got a notion of the biggest challenge that you see existing currently to get your policies passed to really make a difference. What is that? You could pop comments in the chat. You can raise your hand. Brian's got his hand up, but I will just prioritize if there are any of our guests, since I work with Brian every day, luckily. I'll prioritize guests if anybody else wants to jump in first. I could call on somebody, guys. If you know me at all, that's something that I do. For example, Cody, I haven't heard you in the big group chat yet.
Mick, I just wanted to say that I put the question in there. I hope it's right. What is the next big thing we need to crack to advance the circular economy as a collaboration between business and government?
Right. Thank you, Rosie.
I kind of brought it up in our,
so let's go.
I kind of talked about it a bit in our breakout groups. I don't want to like spam everybody with it again, but I was thinking, yeah, the community has to be supported by, or the community has to support it to want it, and they need to be incentivized through like market, or I guess policy work from the government, but that also, they also need to like actually like want to do it and think it's cool and be part of their like lifestyle and things that they want to promote. So having influencers, celebrities or whatnot, and hopefully local ones as well in Vancouver to get Vancouver to transition will be instrumental to that. And policy work to help businesses make put those in so that they can like Karen was saying, like people are like waiting for policy to come in. It's just so they can blame it on the government so that they're not, they don't lose clients because, or customers because that these new, they're putting in a 25-cent fee, but nobody else is, so definitely need these like kind of strategic policies that come in that businesses can use as a tool to transition, while then also having the community support it. And then you can hit critical mass and then we all win. So needed two angles, policy and community.
Really well said. And then those of you representing some of those policy-making and decision-making bodies, how do you respond to that? How do you act to level that playing field? You know I'm going to name names.
Well, I think in my presentation, I tried to cover that we do cover all of these things. So we do the procurement, we do the hard research so we can defend ourselves when people come and tell us that we need to stay with the status quo. We also love to hear what businesses are out there, because we do have to kind of align policies, as I tried to explain in my presentation about organics, with what's realistically possible. So if there's no businesses providing the circular services, it's a little bit risky for us to put in the policy. So that's why we do all that upfront work with the businesses, and then we can move forward with the policies. So just some food for thought. I'm sure my answer is gonna spur more questions, and we'll see where this goes.
Well, that's great. I mean, listen, we know for the most part, businesses, the business community are strapped, right? They are short on time, short on resources. That's the fact of the market. But your group, for example, has put out engagement options for the solid waste management plan, and businesses can take the time to participate in that and provide their insight so that the policy that gets developed is enabling in certain ways of their activities in the circular economy. So it's hand in glove. Does anybody want to counteract that before we go to our closing statements?
Maybe just another conflict. Maybe just another plug for engagement in government processes is taking the time to write or like fill out the survey, and then even like write an email, because there's usually some kind of project inbox or a person's name attached to the engagement process, and just sharing like a lot of detail about like, here's what my situation is. That's really helpful to the people then that are trying to figure out, how do we write this, what wording, what exemptions do we need to include. It's helpful to have the specificity to use a sort of like a test of like, does this capture that thing that person wrote to me about? So engagement is long and can be frustrating, but it's really important.
Yeah, fair. Thank you for capturing the reality of it as well.
I want to plug the city and Metro Vancouver really quick. Is you're putting in policies and things like that without much industry that's in place. Usually it's industry that starts and then they influence the policy, and that you're doing that backwards, which is creating kind of the industry, and you're kind of flying a little bit blind on it. But kudos for doing it, because that's going to only help out and accelerate these things. So thank you all, Karen and Andrea.
Very kind, Cody. Okay, thanks everybody, and over to Jill to wrap us up.
Thanks everybody. So thanks again to all of our presenters, Andrea, Karen, Julie-Anne. You guys can see their contact information here. I also want to thank our partners, Meg, Michelle, Rosemary, Alice, Brianna. Thank you for this last and final session. We just want to let you guys know that within the next few days, we will be sending out a post-event survey, along with a resource document that will capture the biggest learnings from today's sessions, along with the breakout conversations. However, if you do have a moment, we would really love if you could fill out this survey right now. It will take about 2 minutes. I'm just going to pop it in the chat. The purpose of this survey is really to understand what you guys would suggest the network looks like moving forward. So if you're able to take 2 minutes, please just fill this out. It really does only take 2 minutes. We want to be very directly responsive to what you want and what we can do to help you. So if there's somebody that you want to talk to, please reach out to myself or one of our partners, a topic you want to address. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know, respond to what you guys want. We want to thank everyone for joining us for these last 5 sessions. Over these last 3 months, the sessions have provided very in-depth insight into the continued support that is needed in order to advance the circular economy in the Lower Mainland. We're very thankful for everyone who provided feedback and asked the hard-hitting questions during these events. Again, we would like you to reach out to any of our partners. You can see their contact information here, or myself with any ideas of how you'd like this network to move forward. In addition, please fill out this survey, please, so we can have a record of your feedback. Thanks again to our speakers, our partners, and all of you for spending your morning with us. We are going to stick around for about 5 minutes right after this session. I know we're just out of time, but if you have any additional questions or comments, we will be around. Thanks everybody, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks all.